In the summer of 1939, in response to the threat of America's enemies acquiring an atomic bomb, the Manhattan Project was established to develop the world's first atomic bomb. With the help of the United Kingdom and Canada, many scientists' inventions had altered the technology used in warfare. The Manhattan Project successfully found a way to harness fission and produce atomic weapons of mass destruction. They changed the course of history as these awesomely powerful weapons were dropped on the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan, bringing an end to World War II. The United States and Soviet Union victory in World War II may have ended one war, but it brought about a new era as well as increasing tension between the Soviet Union. In the early 1900s, scientists were beginning to research and discover components of atoms, elements, and molecules. Along with these discoveries came theories of the energy released during fission, or the splitting of a uranium atom. The first person to produce fission was physicist Enrico Fermi using uranium. This led to extensive research on fission. In 1938, this led to great fear among those who believed that Hitler and the Nazi Germans would use a weapon and use this power against the United States and its allies. Among those who feared a Nazi A-bomb was renowned physicist Albert Einstein, who wrote to President Roosevelt warning him that the Germans are up to no good. This letter stated that the Germans had begun researching atomic energy and that the Americans should begin research into atomic energy. Franklin authorized a vast process by directing the Uranium Committee, which was established to study high-grade uranium. 2 years later, the Uranium Committee was the only formal governmental group in the United States tasking with work into the atomic research and take late nuclear technology. Nuclear facilities were being built around the U.S. after 3 chemists in Berlin made a discovery that gave U.S. an advantage.
Starting in 1939, a team of scientists, including Enrico Fermi, Leo Szilard, Walter Zinn, and Herbert Anderson, conducted experiments at Columbia University using chain reaction nuclear piles to measure the neutron emission from fission. Production was moved to the Met Lab in February 1942 with the goal of producing a self-sustaining nuclear reaction. This experimental proof could then serve as a model for large-scale plutonium production and for B reactor, which created the plutonium for the Trinity device, was the world's first production reactor. The Y-12 Beta 3 racetracks, the only surviving World War II era electromagnetic isotope separations equipment in the world, still stand complete with operator panels and telephone switchboards, almost exactly as they did during the war. The other signature facilities are the X-10 graphite reactor, the T-plant chemical separation building, the V-site assembly building gun site, and the Trinity site. July 16, 1945, something bad has happened that will forever be irreversible. At 5:30 a.m. on July 16, the nuclear device known as Trinity was successfully detonated on Giornata del Muerto. To most observers watching through dark glasses, the brilliance of the light from the explosion overshadowed the shockwave and the sound that arrived some seconds later. A multicolored cloud surged 30,000 feet into the air within 7 minutes. Where a tower was, now lies a huge crater.
The challenge confronting American policymakers in the post-war years was to enlist the forces of science in the battle to defend the peace. The legacy is without doubt great, and it produced great advances in physics, engineering, and is the origins for many areas such as nuclear energy and nuclear medicine. In addition to the American and Soviet nuclear stockpiles, other countries developed nuclear weapons, though none engaged in warhead production on nearly the same scale as the two superpowers. This horrific event led to the catastrophes of the two cities of Japan. Between 90,000 and 166,000 people died in Hiroshima, while another 60 to 80,000 died in Nagasaki. The people who did not die from the explosion later suffered other radiation complications that happened in a longer period. Radiation caused long-term effects such as cancer by causing mutations in the DNA of living cells. This means even though you did not die from the explosions, you are bound to have major complications in the future. A few days later, President Harry Truman announces the unconditional surrender of Japan.
Received this afternoon a message from the Japanese government in reply to the message forwarded to that government by the Secretary of State on August 11th. I deem this reply a full acceptance of the Potsdam Declaration, which specifies the unconditional surrender of Japan. In the reply, there is no qualification.
The Manhattan Project led to a failed compromise, facing the likelihood of an invasion of Japan, which will result in hundreds of thousands of American casualties. President Harry Truman searched for possible alternatives to this dreadful situation. The best alternative way was to bomb Japanese cities until Emperor Hirohito accepted terms of unconditional surrender. After searching for several possible targets, Hiroshima and Nagasaki were selected. On August 6, 1945, Little Boy, the gun-type bomb, was dropped on Hiroshima. 3 days later, Famine, the implosion bomb, were dropped on Nagasaki. On August 15, Japan abdicated to the United States and is allies unconditionally. This officially ended World War II and launched the world into the atomic age. The discoveries in the Manhattan Project also led to many long-term effects. One of these effects was additional and more powerful nuclear technologies such as hydrogen bombs. It also led to the utilization of nuclear energy and accidents that came from nuclear energy, such as Chernobyl. It led to the nuclear arms race between the United States and the USSR and increased tensions between these two nations. The discoveries of the Manhattan Project have repercussions that have shaped our world forever.
Well, history won't tell us what might have happened. All we know is that this bomb was dropped a few days later, the war ended. And I should also emphasize that it wasn't the horror of dropping the bomb. It was the fact, the sheer shock of seeing two cities destroyed in an instant. This is a shock. This is not horror that bothers them. It's seeing their land destroyed.
The Manhattan Project's wartime mission was completed. It gave way to the Civilian Atomic Energy Commission. How well the Atomic Energy Commission would be able to manage the nuclear arsenal in a Cold War environment, and whether it could successfully develop the peaceful uses of atomic energy, only time would tell. What was clear as the Atomic Energy Commission took over at the beginning of 1947 was that the success of the Manhattan Project had helped cement the bond between basic scientific research and national security. Science had gone to war and contributed mightily to the outcome.
And he remembered what they were doing. So everybody had a feeling with Oppenheimer that this was somebody who really cared, and it made working here just, you could almost call it a pleasure, even though it was much harder work and more frantic than anything we had ever experienced before. But we had a real feeling of belonging.